All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Stream's not showing up today. Yeah, YouTube's been cracking down a little bit. Might have to, well, I guess that's why we stream on X too, right? But yeah, YouTube seems to be shutting some people's stuff down lately. Not us, thank God, but we might have a target on our back for whatever reason. Seen a lot of other people online getting their videos taken down for harmful content. Harmful content. Are we doing harm? Is this harmful? Hopefully not. I don't think it is. Welcome back, guys. Happy Monday. Happy December. Working on getting the Christmas tree up back there. It's a good spot for a Christmas tree right there, no? I'll get that Christmas tree going. Hola, amigo. Hola, Jose. Buenos días. Morning, everyone. Welcome back. Hit the like button. That's right. Appreciate that, Margin. Press that like button. Make sure YouTube knows you like the content. Press that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Wait a few minutes for some people to jump into the stream. How's everyone's weekend? Hopefully good. Nice long weekend. Felt like a long weekend, even though it was a normal weekend. But just, I guess, the way Thanksgiving fell, it was feels like a long weekend this weekend. It was nice. Played some flag football on Thursday. Nice half day on Friday. What did I do yesterday? Yesterday, just chilled, watched some F1. What a crazy F1 end of year it's going to be. Very excited for that. For those of you that watch Formula 1, that's going to be an exciting last race. Really good race on Sunday. That was an interesting one. McLaren messing up the strategy, so that was fun. We got the we got the Giants tonight. I forgot about that. The New York Football Giants tonight. Who won last night? Wow, that was a close game. OT. Holy hell. Broncos won in OT. The New York Football Giants. Well, R.J. Harvey with 2 touchdowns yesterday. R.J. Harvey went to my college, UCF. Texans beat the Colts. How does the downside affect the Leafs? I guess we'll see today, Chef, right? Today will be a good test at what drawdown or what, probably will still be very green on them, but what kind of, downside, what does it give back today on Microsoft, Meta, Broadcom? It's a good test. Well, I guess I'll definitely share that with you guys to see how, how those get affected. This is the pull. We'll talk about it in a second, Chef, this pullback and the whole thesis behind it and all that. So we'll wait for that. But yeah, definitely we'll share that to see, how those long-term contracts get affected on any kind of small pullback or any kind of, small little blip. Obviously, I don't expect, we can't expect a year out to be straight up, right? We're not going to be going straight up for a year. So they're going to have to be able to sit through some of those little dips and stay, along the bigger picture thesis. Always going to be very important to see out, our big idea, right? All right, 8:05, just about 8:04. If you guys could press that like button. If you're here now, 1,200 people, 400 likes. If you guys press that like button before we start, that would be great. Get us along the 1,000 like goal early. And here we go. So we got to take that off because that is no longer a thing there. Let me move that down, make this bigger for you guys. All right. So let's start with let's start with our economic data. Pretty light economic week. Really nothing, big on the economic calendar. Just our normal events, our normal, peppered week of data. No major events such as like CPI, PPI, and FOMC. But today we do have ISM manufacturing PMI at 10 o'clock. We'll be aware of it. Powell speaking tonight at 8 p.m. What the hell he's doing at 8 p.m.? He should be in bed. Where's he at? He's at Stanford University tonight. So he's just sort of talking about panel discussion at Stanford University. Okay. Yeah, I don't think there'd be too much off that. I don't think he's going to be surprising the world at 8 p.m. tonight, but you could, just be aware of that. 8:15 Wednesday, non-farm employment. Thursday, we have the unemployment claims, and then Friday, probably the biggest event of the week, PCE, consumer sentiment, inflation expectations. Okay, that's about that. There are some earnings to pay attention to this week. Let me go ahead and pull those up real quick. So there are some earnings to pay attention to this week, some decent ones if you are an earnings trader or if you're wanting to pay attention to those. So let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. Where the hell is it? It is right here. Here it is. Okay. So earnings. Here's this week. So we have some decent ones. We have MRVL, which is a semiconductor this week. That will be something to pay attention to there. We do have CrowdStrike, which has been a nice name recently. That's something to pay attention to there. We got MongoDB. Shout out Chris Jones. Whenever I think of this name, or whenever I see MDB, I think of Chris Jones. Salesforce, Snowflake. Those are some decent ones. CRM has been off quite a bit off the highs. Maybe something interesting to watch. We'll be looking at that a little bit. That's about it, I think, for the week. Ulta, always an interesting name. And that's really the main ones that I would be watching. MDB, MRVL, CrowdStrike, CRM, Snowflake, and Ulta would be the ones that I'd be, keeping eyes on and see what they're doing. All right? Okay. So with that said, let's get into what's the most important thing, and that is the key technical levels to be watching today. Definitely. And there is a very important thing going on, and there's a very interesting discrepancy going on. Very. So I don't want to start on the NASDAQ here yet. What I want to start on actually is the S&P 500, okay? And I want to go back to what our correct thesis is. And I want everyone here to pay attention. Very vivid. I want you to really block in here for a second, okay? In this upside move, and on Wednesday and our Friday, if you remember our Wednesday conversation and our Friday conversation, we talked about one thing. And that one thing was that we will possibly need the pullback to this Monday high to continue the correct structure to the upside, okay? So we had a high turn into a low. We had a high right here that has not turned into a low. We have not seen this get tested again. We have not seen the market pull back and test this Monday high. Now on Tuesday of last week, we did test this Friday high, right? We had a Friday high that got tested right here. So let me say that one more time so I can record this and we can use this later on. We have this high right here. We tested that high on Tuesday of last week, which facilitated a strong upside move. Now that upside move has gotten a little bit ahead of itself, right? It has not created the higher low structure that I would like to see back at this Monday high. You can see that has not been tested. So if we do get this pullback to the Monday high, I still believe that that is a bullish structure setting up for potential upside, right? However, you just don't want to be caught being over leveraged long if we get this pullback, right? That's the pullback that you want to stay away from on the long side and then reassess once we get there, right? So that's something I need you to pay attention to this week. There is definitely a reason for some pullback to this Monday high, but you can't be, irrationally long up here and get caught being, taking a big loss if this does pull back. Because the correct spot to, sort of re-enter the long, in my opinion, is likely, the best spot is likely 67.30, 67.25. Now, that is a nice spot. However, there is something a little bit weird about that spot. And the thing that would be weird at that point, if you do get that pullback, is you would be trading back under these major highs. So that's a little bit questionable to me, right? Because if you do get your 67.30 pullback, which would be the nice structure for a higher low, the question at that point would be, can you actually get back above these highs, right? Because what if this happens? If you hold here and it does give you a nice upside, but what if you get the lower high then right there, right? That's going to be a little bit of a... That's why we show up, right? That's why we trade, because that's definitely a little bit questionable to me. So I do like this pullback at 67.30. But at that point, you would technically be failing back under these highs, which could then turn into another lower high. So this is a tough one. It is. This is a tough one. However, I do see this being a nice spot, and I also do see this being a nice spot. Now, here's how you stay very bullish today, okay? The very bullish thing to do today would be to not lose 67.90. If you don't lose 67.90 today, that is very bullish in my opinion. Do you have to pull back to this 67.30? You do not. You don't have to. Would it be understandable if you do? Absolutely. Would it make me think that the market is tanking? No, because that's a good pullback spot. But what would be even more bullish than that would just be to hold these highs, and hold that 67.90 rejection point from that Thursday of 2 weeks back. If you just hold above that today, right here, between 67.90 and 68.12, which you can see right now is putting up a little bit of a battle, right? If this just finds a strong low today out of here and we do push higher off this level, that is pretty bullish. That's very bullish, actually. That's also above that daily 20 and still above that daily 50. So we're going to have to see what the price action shows today. Is it a strong hold above 67.90, 68.12? Or do we see a little bit of a give up back towards 67.30? This is going to be a big question this week. The daily 20, daily 50 are right here. So I would be careful shorting into that 67.30. I'm not really a fan of shorting into 67.30. Even if we do lose the 67.90, I don't think I would short that because you have a daily 20, daily 50, and then you're right back into that demand. Now, for me, where this actually flips bearish would be if we lose this Monday high. If we fail back under that Monday high and see something like this, right, that to me is pretty bearish. So this whole area to me, anywhere from here to here, is all very possible pullback long criteria, sort of monitoring price action inside of that area, right? We'll have to see, right? This is why we show up every day. This is why we watch price action. But we do see two very big levels here, 67.90, 68.12, and then the 67.30 right here. These are two very interesting pullback long areas on the market for me, okay? We'll see. Now, here is where it gets a little bit discrepant, okay? This is where it gets discrepant, and this is where things get a little bit fuzzy in my mind, a little bit, little, you know, that little, you know, that reaction. This is where this is why this is occurring in my mind today. When I look at the NASDAQ futures, look what the NASDAQ futures are trading below. The NASDAQ futures are already trading below these highs this morning, which is interesting. And it's actually rejecting that spot as we speak. So that's a little bit questionable. So if I go to the ES, once again, pay attention. You can see here on the ES, you are holding above these highs. You are sitting right above them right now. And you are above that Thursday rejection at 67.90. Look what the NASDAQ is doing. The NASDAQ is below that level right here, right there. You can see it's actually rejecting that level this morning. So this is very interesting. There's your reason why you watch the ES and NQ. This is why you watch the discrepancy between these contracts and also between the SPY and Qs, which you're going to see is also discrepant. This is going to be an interesting sort of start to December. Which one takes the lead? Does the ES hold take the lead, or does the NASDAQ rejection take the lead? I can't answer that. I cannot answer that. That's something that you have to answer on the intraday as price action starts to move. But for now, what I'm cautious of today is the fact that the NASDAQ futures are rejecting 25,400, which is this high right here, all right? So that's a little bit interesting. You are at the daily 20 and daily 50. Absolutely. That is a spot to be careful of. There is no shorting into these moving averages today, right? So if you're, super bearish on this rejection, I don't mind that idea, but there's really not much reason to be shorting into daily moving averages. There never is. So that's a tough spot to even take that short entry because you're still into that daily moving average. And guess what? You're still, remember, this is the retest we're looking for, the 25,000 Monday highs. So anything above 25,000 Monday highs, in my opinion, is still a nice retest and potential higher low. If you remember this, Friday high into new lows. Monday high, this is your potential new low. So it's a rejection point, but it's not really a short for me. I'm not going to short into the daily 20, daily 50. I'm not going to short into Wednesday's lows, and I'm surely not going to short back into Monday's highs. It's just not really a zone that has, much interest for me here on the short side. If we turn this Monday high back into a failure point and you see something like this, then I would be looking for that downside back towards possibly this 24/7, all right? sort of looking for that short on a fail of Monday's highs. That's nice. But for now, this is too tight of an area to be looking to play against this trend, and it's also too tight of an area to really do anything, right? So for me, to be quite honest, when I look at this like this, I think you can sort of establish a little NTZ to start the week, honestly. If you want to say, hey, I want to give this market some time, I want to see what it wants to do today before I just think that I know what it's going to do right at the Monday open, right? I think you probably could even look at this and say, hey, I'm going to stay away from this zone because I don't want to long into this supply. I don't want to short into this demand or the daily 20 or 50. So I'm going to stay away. And I'm going to let price action show me what it wants to do. I'm either going to look for a break back above that 25.4. I'm going to look for the pullback to create a long down here. Or I'm going to look for this to fail and give me a rejection play, right? And I'm going to stay away from the questionable sort of inside this channel type of price action. So, yeah, interesting morning. You just got to know your levels and know your ideas and know your thesis before the market open. Now, here's where, again, it flips back to this is not bearish, right? So the NASDAQ may have got you a little bit bearish, right? You're, ooh, look at that, a little bit bearish there. Here's where it flips right back to thinking, maybe I shouldn't short that. Here's the SPY. The SPY is above these highs. The SPY is above this high. The SPY is still very nicely above the daily 20 SMA. The SPY is possibly the cleanest look for the pullback long right now. If you look at the hourly chart on the SPY, you have very clear highs here at 675.50. You have very clear previous highs in the 4-hour right here at 673. And this 674 area here, right? So here's 674. Let me go ahead and put that on the charts 1 second. So you have 674 right here, 673.95, that's these highs. You have 673, that's these highs. And you have that rejection at 675.56. So anywhere between 673 and that 675, anywhere in there, you are trading lower back into previous highs. That definitely could become a new low. And also could become the daily 20 SMA pullback long, right? And if you look at the board behind me, you can see there's my drawing for you today. Right behind you, 673, 675. And the daily 20. Look over there, right here, right? So to me, that might be the cleanest read. And that is definitely not a spot that I am going to short into today. There is just no reason for me to be looking short back into that zone. It does not make sense logically in my mind. If anything, this is a really good sort of cool off. Stop going straight up, cool off a little bit, give me that pullback to the daily 20 and that 675, and then reassess that thing back to the upside. That's still very much intact there. Until you lose, in my opinion, Monday's highs right here, everything is a pullback long, in my opinion. However, what a lot of people on this live stream and a lot of Timmy and Jimmys out there don't quite understand is you have to read price action. I may say that I like pullback longs, but I am not going to long a market if you are going straight down all day. Okay, there is a difference between your key levels and your price action. If you guys showed up for our free education, that 3-day live event, that was a very important topic we talked about. You can like key levels to be potential pullback longs, but you have to watch the price action. If the market looks like this today, I am not going to long these levels. I'm not just I'm not just like stuck in time and I can't react to what's going on. So I like these spots. I love this spot at the daily 50. I love this area between 673, 675, but I'm not going to long this if you're in an all-day downtrend, right? Just not the right thing to do. So you set up your ideas and you watch price action. And so that's what we're doing today. QQQ. So the Qs are right at the spot, right at the spot. I mean, just sitting right at it. you have major previous highs here between 612 and 614. You have this major low at 612. You can see these highs right here between 612 and 614. And you can see the QQQ is trading right at the major spot, 612, 614, and the daily 20 SMA. If this holds today, I think you can see this market fill this gap down and move back up to the 619.50. So again, you are sitting right at the QQQ, daily 20 and 612. If that holds today, you have this gap down that could be looking to get filled, right? Back to 619.50. If you lose 612 and you lose the daily 20 today, then I think that is a good reason to see the market fail, possibly back down to that Monday high, which is where we're looking for that retest. The Monday high retest, the daily 50 SMA, that could be a nice spot as well. Okay, so good levels today. You just have to have your ideas set up. You have to know how to follow your ideas intraday, and I hope that that helped you. And there's no better analysis than your own analysis, right? So I'm going to be able to follow these thoughts today very clearly because I created this myself. I hope that you can help you. I hope that watching this helps you create these levels yourself and theses yourself. But there's just simply no better analysis than your own analysis. I'm going to be able to follow this clearly because I created this morning and last night with the group. And so let's see if I'm able to now execute upon these ideas. All right, let's move on. SMH, hourly chart, SMH, you can see the SMH is failing that 348, 351 area, right? These previous rejection highs, they are failing once again. Where do I like the SMH back to? I like it back to that Monday high still, right? I really do. I think that's the right level still, right here. This Monday high, this daily 50, give us that nice structure, right? You have highs into lows, you have highs into lows. That's where the structure starts again, right? Structure, structure, and structure. Where have you not tested? You have not tested the structure 3 lows. This previous structure 2 highs. Here's structure 1, here's structure 2, here's structure 3. What have you not tested? You have not tested the structure 2 highs. You haven't seen if they've turned into lows yet. That's where you want to see the market test and prove to you that it can hold. That's why the title of this live stream is, Can We Create the Higher Lows? So when you pull back to this level, that's not bearish. That is what you need to see happen so that the market can prove to you that bulls are going to step up here. So if we do get this pullback today, I would be very confident to look for that potential higher low long. Right? I'm not going to be panicking, shorting, or panicking out of positions if that's still holding, because that's where you should pull back to. So let's see if we get that. That is what you did on this Tuesday, and it created a sick long opportunity. So those that didn't panic here, understood that the Friday high was there, probably made some good money. So it's the same thing today. Don't panic if the market goes lower into 341 on the SMH. That is potentially what you want to see happen to continue this structuring move higher, right? So people that understand that markets don't go straight up in a vertical line typically are the ones that do pretty well, right? And this is it, right? You're not going to go straight up in a vertical line. You're going to see the market do what the market always looks like, or what you see on Google Images, right? This is what a Google image chart looks like. It looks like this, right? It creates the highs into lows, highs into lows. It doesn't look like this. So let's see if that occurs today. IWM is sitting up at the major supply highs. It bounced all the way back up into those highs. I would be obviously cautious up in here. This is definitely not the spot to be longing. So just a little bit cautious in there. I think that this over here is really the best spot at the daily 20 over here, but we'll see. I'm not going to be much of an IWM trader today up in that supply area. Dow Jones actually holding really nicely at this 47,460 spot. It looks like you might need to come back down into like maybe this previous high over here, at 47,300, 330, right in there. Looks like a nice spot on the Dow. These highs, and right in there is something I would be watching on the Dow Jones. Rob Pope, appreciate that, man. Moment of silence for 1,000 likes. Press that like button if you could. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. But yeah, very clean read on the ESNQ. A little bit of discrepancy to pay attention to. But that ES 6790, 6812, man, that really is a big, big, big spot. And you can see it's trying to do its thing right now. It's trying to do its thing right now, so we shall see. Okay. All right, let's get into some equities. First of all, Tesla. So I still think that Tesla looks great here. If we go to the weekly chart, we can see the weekly chart looks like a very nice little structure back to the upside, in my opinion. We have this nice weekly high that has, held very nicely right there on a little break and retest, which is nice. If we go to the daily chart, we can see that that also was right off the daily 100 SMA, which is really nice right there. Now, the key on Tesla moving forward is the higher lows that must hold true. So if I look at this 4-hour chart on Tesla, I see these major previous lows, and I can see that those turned into previous rejection points right here. And now moving forward, all I need to see is us hold above that area. As long as Tesla is above this area, then I believe you are creating a higher low back at these rejections and back above these lows right here. So for now, you are going to look to probably see a little bit of a cool off, right? You're sort of rejecting the 433 and the daily 50, which is totally fine, as the market should. All I want to see now is if we pull back into this area, that this holds true, right? If we fail back under this, that's not good. Okay, that's where this breaks down. So looking to see if those higher lows can stay true. NVIDIA. I am likely done trading NVIDIA until we come back down to 153 to 140. That's really where I want to see NVIDIA come back to. If I go to the weekly chart here, you can very clearly see where I think NVIDIA is probably needing to reset to. If I look at this weekly, I think we can all see it. It's right in here, guys. I really think that you need a little bit of a reset here on NVIDIA. It just has not been the same stock that we're used to, right? NVIDIA has been on the weak side since earnings. The last 4 weeks have been just sort of ugly, red, sort of shitty action that I just really don't like to get involved in. I think you need sort of a grand reset, maybe one of those nice downside moves, to sort of come back down into this major weekly demand, and then we can start to get interested again. Right now, it just seems to be floating without much strength, and I think the likelihood is that you are going to see this come back to these weekly highs right here, around 153 to 140. So I'm not a big player of NVIDIA right now. I don't see it. I don't see the reason to, like these last 4 weeks, I have no read. Right? What am I reading off these last 4 weeks? Nothing. I got nothing here. These last 4 weeks give me zero interest. What do I want to see us come back to? I want to see us hit a big level. All right? I need to see us hit something important. And when I look at this weekly chart, the only important spot I see are these highs right there. So 153, 140. If we can get back into that zone, I'll get interested again. But for now, sort of dead to me, man. Broadcom, incredible. Incredible stuff. Super strong. Hit the 400 level. Unfortunately, failing back under it now. There's a few spots that I would be watching today. First one is on the hourly chart. I'm going to be watching these previous highs right around this 392 to 395. I actually go back to the 4-hour. You can see right here. So on Broadcom, these previous 4-hour highs at 392. Between that and this 395, that is going to be a spot I watch today to see if it holds. If we can't hold that 392, 395, then I think it is very possible that Broadcom could need that pullback, maybe back down to that 375, 370 again. That would be a spot to watch. So I'm going to be watching both that 370, 375 and that 392, 395 area on Broadcom. Right now, you can see it is trying to hold that 392, 395 area. You can see right here. Trying for now. We'll see what it does. AMD rejecting the level that it needs to get above. You can see here on AMD, it's basically just stuck between a rock and a hard place. Here's your lows, here's your highs, and it is just sort of stuck in between that area. So for me, this is a pretty clear NTZ on AMD between this area right here, right? Not really going to get interested in trading within that. You definitely could see if that fails, that 220, 225 zone, right? This could be a nice lower high failure right here. Here's a low, here's a lower high. It could be a nice little curl back over for sure. I definitely could see that happening if markets are weak. Just got to be a little bit cautious and see if markets are truly weak. If markets are not weak, then you short this, you might get taken out of it. All right, so I'm not that big of a fan of that, but that is definitely something that's visible on the charts there. 195 previous highs here, daily 100 SMA, still a very big demand down there. To really get AMD going again, you need to see a break back over this 220, 225. You can't really get too confident on AMD upside until you get above these highs right here. So that's really it for the semis. Qualcomm is basically dead to me. SMCI is dead to me. Yeah. TSM's pretty much dead to me. That thing's going nowhere. I'm sure it'll make a move eventually, but right now it's not interesting. MRVL has earnings. MRVL doing a nice little retest hold back above this 85 spot right here. That looks pretty nice. But earnings are approaching. MU, a little bit cautious on it. Between this daily 228, 231 area, possibly an interesting spot today. But again, I'm just not too much of a fan of that. You could look for this zone to hold, though, for sure, right in here. 231, 228, see if these highs turn into lows. If this can hold, that's good. If it breaks below it, you might be looking for that move back down to 215, 216. But for me, semiconductors I'm really going to focus on, probably MU, Broadcom, and AMD. Those are the three that I've been sort of focused on more than anything. Okay, let's go to Amazon, because I think this is one of my top watches moving forward here. I like the Amazon move here. I like this setup that's forming. Amazon daily 50, daily 100 SMA is sitting right here at 228. I see a nice clear high here. I see some very clear highs here. If Amazon can continue to maintain above 228, I do like Amazon to create a higher low and continue higher back towards the 238, 240. I think that's quite a nice look. However, of course, we need market strength. We need to see what markets do here today and this week. But right now on this hourly chart, there's a nice previous high here that you've continued to hold all of last week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, just maintained above that all week. Daily 50, daily 100 sitting right there, major previous high. I'm watching 228 Amazon. Meta. So Meta, awesome longs last week, sitting up nicely, about 20% on some 2027 leaps, which was a great entry point. Now, Meta looks like it probably could get a little bit of a failure here at 642. What I would like to see at this point is just Meta once again to create those higher lows. Meta probably sees a pullback, I'd say, to at least this 630 spot, and maybe even the 617 and daily 20, which are still great pullback opportunities. All right, here's your Monday high. You never retested that. So even if Meta comes back to that 617 and daily 20, that could be a great thing to be paying attention to, all right, on a little pullback long. So watching 617 Meta, watching this 630 Meta, you have to get over 642. Over 642, you trade the 660. Okay. Netflix, really not much for me on Netflix. I'm waiting for it to get over this 108 spot. You can see right here, rejections. You can see I have my alert set. I'm just waiting for Netflix to get above that spot. Google is actually an interesting trade today. If markets are weak, this is my top watch to the downside. If markets are weak, I like this little flip that's potentially happening this morning. That's if markets are weak. Here's a high, here's a low, and look at this low right here, and look what's happening this morning. If Google maintains below these lows, right, if you turn this low and this low and this low into a rejection point today on something like this, then that is a nice lower high, and you do not have much support below here until 309 right there. Right? There's really not much to hold Google up if you actually reject this level. Now, below 309.40, you do have a gap here that has not been filled. So underneath 309.40, this daily low right here, you technically have a gap to close at 300. From this close right here to this low right here, I'd also have a potential support level at the high of this candle, which is 304. But technically, the gap is between 309 and 300. That's technically where the gap is on Google. Now, Google is also one of the strongest names out there, so you got to be a little bit aware of shorting probably the strongest stock on the market. Probably not the best idea, but if we do get some really weak markets, this is actually a clean thing to be watching here. Downside off 318 into that 309, gap filled at 300. Do we get that? I don't know. Right? I'm not going to go out there and just start slamming Google shorts off the open unless I see some real market weakness. If Google does reclaim this level, then that actually is the strongest thing to look for. If you reclaim, trap shorts under this level, and then reclaim this low, that's then a very bullish look. So you're right on edge between whether that is a strong look or a weak look. That's something you have to watch intraday. That is why we get paid to watch price action. Palantir. 170 is the level that must break. That's very clear. It needs to get over 170. 170 in the daily 100 SMA. Without that, it's really not interesting. UNH. Would like to see what UNH does this week. I'd like to see if it can hold this 326 and this daily 20 SMA right in here, this 326 and 328 zone. Can it turn these previous highs into new lows? That's something I'm going to be watching for UNH. Hood. Pulling back to the daily 100 today, this actually could be a very nice opportunity, my friends. Hood had a big squeeze on Wednesday of last week. It is now retesting the breakout point. Previous highs, previous lows, daily 100s right here at 120.50. If I go out to the 4-hour, you can also see, take a look at this, guys. This is possibly one of my top watches today. Major highs, major lows, major lows, major lows, major lows, major highs, and look at where Hood is trading back into on a break and retest long, right? That's something I would absolutely be watching here. Does Hood hold the daily 100, and does Hood hold back above these major lows? That's very interesting today on Hood. I would be watching that. APP is another one that has reclaimed major previous lows, and a pullback would be good. We can see here, major lows into highs. Does that turn back into support? That is also right above the daily 20 SMA right here. So this pullback is very interesting as well to see if this area can flip long, flip bullish once again. That's a nice watch as well. So some nice watches out there, man. I really like some of the things I'm looking at, but we have to be patient and allow the pullback to come in and then let the pullback prove to us that it's actually going to create a higher low. That is something that is very, very important this week. Circle 75. Here's a low. Here's a high. Circle turned that 75 into support on Friday. If we can hold that 75, I actually do like Circle back to the upside. That's if we can hold that 75 spot. Okay, that's it. I got nothing on Apple. 277 is the level, but I got nothing on it. Snow has earnings, so not really interested. CRM has earnings, not really interested. CMG has that gap to fill. You can look for that. Above this high right here, that is a CMG gap to fill. Likely back to like the 38, possibly back into like the 39.40 spot. You could look for that. You got to see it hold this 34 spot. You got to see it hold this 34 spot. You could look for that CMG gap fill. That's something that could be interesting. Oracle, another one that's sort of interesting off the major retest on the weekly chart. So here on the weekly chart, you have major highs here. I would personally like to see Oracle back over this 218.80 spot right here before I did anything long, back above this high right here. So I might set an alert on that. That's also, you can also see Oracle's rejecting the daily 200. So, you know, as much as I like daily pullbacks, as much as I like big pullbacks, I don't like longing anything under the 200. When we go to Microsoft, if you remember, we took this long on Microsoft because it was holding the 200, right? Microsoft was holding the 200. It was not rejecting the 200. So that's different, right? Oracle is rejecting the 200. I'd want to see it back above that before thinking it's something like Microsoft, which has been a great bounce off the 200 SMA, right? So what does Microsoft need to do now? Well, it's very clear. Microsoft needs to create higher lows, and that higher low sets up right here at 482. Microsoft then needs to get over 495 and get back above the daily 20. But that's, to be determined. We have to see what happens. All right, so let's get a quick recap on the markets. You can see NASDAQ futures is holding the daily 20, daily 50. S&P 500 is continuing to hold the 6790, 6812 zone. The SPY has not quite pulled back to our 675, 673, so maybe there's a little bit more pullback to be had. And the QQQ is holding right at our daily 20 and our 612 level. Some interesting levels to be watching today. The pullback long, I think, is still the correct thing to look for, but that could change, right? So that is why we step up and we watch the intraday action. So let's see what happens today. That's going to be it for me. I hope you enjoyed the live stream. If you did, if this helped you prepare for your trading day, make sure to show up every day starting at 8 a.m. We got 2,500 people here. That's a pretty nice number. If you guys could, press that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you want to trade live with me in the group every day on a daily basis, you can check it out down below. Every day besides Wednesday. We are going to be doing another round for the mentorship group starting 2026. So if you are interested in joining that group where we do our Sunday preps, we do our Wednesday call, we do a Friday recap, so 3 calls a week on Zoom with a small group. You can check that out down below and apply. Let me make sure I have the right link for that. Hold on, that's the wrong link. So let me make sure I get that right link for you. Bear with me. This is the right link for that. Let me make sure that's correct. Boom. All right. All right, guys. I hope you have a fantastic trading day. I hope you have a fantastic week. Of course, we'll be here. We'll be here tomorrow, as always, 8 a.m. So make sure to be there. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace and love.